And it's particularly meaningful for me to introduce our keynote speaker, Rabbi Glatstein, who's a Morid Asra of Kehillas Seferis Mordechai in Cedarhurst. But his impact reaches far beyond that as the founder of Machon Maggid Harakiah through his Shiurim, video presentations, Sefarim, and publications. Years ago, a then lesser-known Rabbi Glatstein received a call from a man who heard a shiur of his and was struck by the clarity, the depth, but more by the breadth of the shiur, and wanted to receive the Mara Mekaimis. As demand grew, he began to disseminate Rabbi Glatstein's Torah and has since compiled a list of thousands of names all over the globe who receive the Rav's Torah. This is how my father has been a part of Rabbi Glatstein's Habatzas HaTorah for the past 15 years. There's a covet to ask Rabbi Glatstein to give the opening keynote.
Good morning, friends. This conference is a lot bigger than you think. One day, a man named Moshe is shepherding his flock, and he encounters a bush, a thorn bush. You know this story. It's engulfed in fire. V'hine hasneh boyer ba'esh, v'hasneh inenu ukal. And Chazal tell us this was not merely a physical phenomenon that Moshe encounters, but Moshe Rabbeinu was experiencing prophecy. In fact, Moshe Rabbeinu hears the resounding voice of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No one in the history of the world ever heard the Almighty say in succession their name twice, Moshe, Moshe, without a psik in between. And when Moshe experiences nevuah, we're not talking about your regular nevuah like Avraham Avinu and Yeshaya Hanavi. They prophesied basbaklaria she'ena meira. They prophesied in a prism that was not crystal clear. Not so Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe is about to speak to the Ribbon Shalom basbaklaria ha'meira, says the Maral. This means that from the day the Ribbon Shalom created the world, no one had ever encountered the Ribbon Shalom in such an elevated experience. So I ask you one simple question. What did the man do that he was zoicha to speak to the Ribbon Shalom panim al panim? You know, the Torah does not give us any information up till this point about Moshe Rabbeinu. Libi Oimerli, that we have one short pasuk that precedes the encounter of Moshe Rabbeinu and the Ribbon Shalom. U'Moshe hayaroya es tzoin Yisroi choisnoi vayinhag es hatzoin achar hamidbar zakt Rashi. Listen to the simple words of Rashi. Achar hamidbar lehisrachik min hagezel. Moshe Rabbeinu had not done anything more than simply make a harchaka in Dinei Chosh and Mishpat. He displayed Zehirus with others' money. Look what an aliyah Moshe Rabbeinu had. He just distanced himself in Dinei Chosh and Mishpat, and all of a sudden the Ribono Shel Olam comes down. Vayikra Elav Elokim Vayomer Moshe Moshe. Marav throughout the year, we look for opportunities for zechusim to elevate ourselves, to elevate our families, and sometimes we just don't know what will really bring us aliyah. You know, the Mesilas Yesharim makes a frightening statement. Mesilas Yesharim teaches us, "Hachasidus ho'amiti hu rachaik mitziur sechlenu." That what true righteousness is very far from our imagination. We sometimes conjure up an image, what a tzaddik looks like. What does he do? How does he conduct himself? What kind of hanhagos does a tzaddik practice? And yet we see from a simple comment of Rashi that the greatest aliyah a person could experience in this world is if one takes precautions not to take a pruta that doesn't belong to them. Real aliyah comes when a person takes off valuable time from a busy schedule, from a workload, from family time. Real aliyah comes when one participates in H3 Los Angeles Summit 2024. We talk about aliyah, we talk about sidkus. You know, the great tzaddik, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. There was once a Zakein who wanted to observe, what does Rabbi Yisrael Salanter do on Erev Yom Kippur? How does he prepare himself for the Yom HaKadosh? So one year, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter went to the house of his son-in-law, Rav Yaakov Morneau. He goes to the city of Kranyuk, and somebody came to observe Rabbi Yisrael. What did Rabbi Yisrael Salanter do on Erev Yom HaKippurim? So it's early in the morning, and after davening, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter did not head to the Beis HaMedrash. He did not go to the mikvah. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter went to the kitchen, and he took out a hammer from the closet, and he put it under his jacket, and he proceeded to go to the nearest shul. And he went to the benches, and he proceeded to knock in every loose nail in the Beis HaKnesses, so that the owner of the shul would not have on their shoulders any hezek when the Yom HaKadosh comes. And then Rabbi Yisrael Salanter went upstairs to the Ezras Noshim, so that no woman should have her dress torn, and the owner of the shul would be guilty of gezela. And then Rabbi Yisrael Salanter went to all 9 shuls in Kranyuk, and he spent the day banging in nails in preparation for the Yom HaKadosh. Kach hayadarko shel Rabbi Yisrael Salanter erev Yom HaKippurim. You want aliyah, you want sidkus. Aliyah comes from zehirus and chosh and mishpat. Rabbi Yisrael heard about a group of quote-unquote tzaddikim who wanted to elevate themselves. They wanted to be purest mein yanei olam hazeh, so they gathered together and they committed themselves to learn Shas B'Iyun, starting with Masechta Brachos. Said Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, Masechta Brachos? Shas B'Iyun is wonderful. Masechta Brachos is Ruba de Rabbanans. Masechta Shabbos, you can't start with Shabbos. It's mostly the Rabbanon. Erevin is mostly the Rabbanon. When you learn Shas, Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Baba Basra, Dine Schirus, Dine Yerusha, Dine Shutfis, Dine Mamanois, Kulam Da'iraisa Ninhu. This idea that the Ikar Aliyah that a person experiences in Ruchnias does not come from Zehirus and Chametz, does not come from Zehirus and Minyan. I know many Erl Chayidin. They tell me they have a streak. They haven't missed Minyan in over 10 years. Mi ka'amcha Yisrael. It's wonderful. And we have to be Zoher Bekala Kechamura. But that is not the Ikar Aliyah in Avodas Hashem. What is the Ikar Aliyah? David HaMelech says, Mi Yale Behar Hashem. Neki Chapayim. The Ikar Aliyah in Avodas Hashem comes when you could go to sleep at night and you could rest assured that there's not a penny in your bank account that doesn't belong to you or someone else has a valid claim on. I grew up in Flatbush. When I was about 19 years old, 20 years old, I came back from Eretz Yisrael, and I got in my head, I want to go to the shul of Rabbi Victor Miller, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha. So I used to walk. It was about a 50-minute walk from Avenue M and East 31st to Ocean Parkway next to the Meir Yeshiva. And I remember very clearly Rav Miller asked the following question. Yaakov Avinu, he's running away from Esav. He's going from Beersheva. He passes the Har Habayis. He goes to Beisel. And then Yaakov Avinu realizes, Efsher avarti b'makom she'espalalu avoisai v'lo hispalalti. Yaakov Avinu makes an about face, and he has a dream. Vayach Elohim, v'hinei malachei Elokim oilim v'yardim bai. He sees angels in a dream. He's sleeping. He's having a prophecy in his dream. Fast forward 20 years. He spends 20 years by that conniving crook, Lavan. And on his way back, the pasuk says, Vayelech Yaakov ledarkoi, vayifku uboy malachei Elokim. But this time he's not dreaming. This time he's not sleeping. This time Yaakov Avinu is awake. He sees the malachim in his state of being awake. You know, prophecy when you're awake is a much higher darga of nevuah than when you're sleeping. B'chaloi madaber bay. What did Yaakov Avinu do in those 20 years? That he steiged and he elevated himself from seeing malachim when he was sleeping to now seeing malachim when he's awake. Was Yaakov Avinu learning in Koilel for those 20 years? Nope. He wasn't in yeshiva. He had already learned before the first nevuah. So what did Yaakov Avinu do that he was zoiche now to see malachim in a state of being awake? I remember Rav Miller said, what did Yaakov Avinu do? He wasn't in the yeshiva. He wasn't in the koilel. He wasn't in the beis medrash. He went to work. And he worked honestly. And he didn't take home paper clips. And he didn't make a long distance call on the boss's bill. And he didn't call in sick when he had a runny nose. And he gave a full day's work. And even though the boss was a crook, Yaakov Avinu says, "Hayisi bayoim achalani chayre v'kerach baloila v'atidad shnasi meyenai." He wasn't staying up late learning; he was staying up working. Because honest working could bring a yid aliyah, perhaps in a way even more than Torah and Tefillah. And shall we say that this is the most underrated zechus in our world? And when I say our world, I don't mean the secular world. I mean unsere heimische Yidden. Do we ever hear about, oh, that person, he's a tzaddik because he works honestly for his boss, because he doesn't take a penny that doesn't belong to him? Did you know that in the entire Yad HaChazaka of the Rambam, there's only one individual who's called a tzaddik? You know, nowadays, every yid's a big tzaddik. But according to the Rambam, there's only one individual who's given the title tzaddik. In the Rambam's closing words of Hilchos Schiros, Perek Yud Gimel, Halacha Zayin, says the Rambam, Kederech shemuzar balabayis shelo yigzal schar ani. The same way the boss is obligated not to steal from the worker, kach muzar ha'ani shelo yigzal melechas balabayis. The worker has to be careful not to steal from the boss. V'chayav lavoid b'chol koichai. And when you go to work, you need to give it all you got. Zok the Rambam, Shahare Yaakov, Hat Sadik, Omar, Ki B'chol Koichi, Avadati Yas Avichen. Look why the Rambam calls Yaakov a tzaddik, because he learned in yeshiva Shem Ve'ever, and he didn't sleep one night? No, that doesn't make him a tzaddik. Because he put in a full day's work. Working be'emunah, Ne'emanus ba'avoida brings a yid aliyah beruchnius. Moshe Rabbeinu was zoiche to nevuah because he was careful min hagezela. Yaakov is a tzaddik because he put in a full day's work. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that's great for ruchnius, but this is a business conference. This is not going to work for business. As they say, nice guys finish last. So friends, the Rambam's not finished. The Rambam continues. We know that the Avos HaKadoshim, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, were phenomenally wealthy. By Avraham it says, Va'avraham kavod ma'od b'mikna b'kesef uvazav. By Yitzchak it says, Vayigdal ha'ish, Vayilech haloich v'gadol ad ma'od. But does anybody know who was the wealthiest of all the Avos? Zok the Rambam, it says by Yaakov Avinu, Vayifroitz ha'ish me'oid ma'oid. Says the Rambam, Yaakov hatzadik amar b'chol koichi avadati as avichen lefikach natal schar Af ba'olam hazeh, says the Rambam, even though there's a principle here in Nun Daled. Schara b'hayal moleka, you can't expect reward in this world. Not so. If you work ethically, you could expect bracha ba'olam hazeh. You know, Rav Moshe has a phenomenal kasha in the Igros Moshe. Rav Moshe talks about a scenario where in Chodesh Elul, let's say for whatever reason, the shul that you're davening in doesn't have a shofar. Is there tashlumim for tkiyah shofar in Chodesh Elul? So the Igros Moshe in Chelek Daled, Siman Chaf Aleph, says Rav Moshe, if you look in the Ramah, in Siman Tav Kuf Pei Aleph, the Ramah brings that back in the day, they used to blow shofar, shacharis, and mincha. Says Rav Moshe, nowadays the minhag is only to blow shacharis. But says Rav Moshe, if you didn't blow shacharis, avada, there's tashlumin mincha time. And now Rav Moshe asks a phenomenal question. Ask Rav Moshe, come to think of it, why do we blow shofar at the end of davening? Shouldn't we blow shofar in the beginning of davening? After all, the purpose of the shofar is uru yeshena mishinaschem. So let's blow in the beginning of davening so that we'll daven b'kavana, so that we'll do tshuva. Why blow shofar when davening is over? Says Rav Moshe, you think tshuva is to daven better? You think tshuva is to learn more? Tshuva means to work more honestly. So we blow the shofar after davening, when people go to work, because the purpose of tshuva is to analyze choshen mishpat, not orach chayim. And that's what today is. Today is a tekiyah shofar of sorts. It's an uru yeshena mishinaschem for dinei choshen mishpat. So you say we couldn't have come up with a better time? We're a week before Kabbalas HaTorah. Is this the time to prepare, to learn, to elevate dinei choshen mishpat? I just saw yesterday. You know, there's a famous kasha, all the Rishonim raise. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, the Gemara in Kedushin says, Ein tchilas dinoi shel adam ela al divrei Torah. The first question that we're all going to have to answer, the first responsibility that we're accountable for is limud Torah. So Tosfos asks, all the Rishonim ask, so why does Rava say in Shabbos, Amar Rava b'shah shemachnisim adam ladin, shoyal and loy, nasasa v'nasata be'amuna, kavata itim l'Torah. Why is kavata itim l'Torah second? Shouldn't it be first? Isn't it chilas dinoi? Says Imrei Emes in his Likutim on Sanhedrin. If you look in the Hakdama of the Tzitz Eliezer Chelek Beis, it says avada, the first responsibility of a Jew is kavata itim l'Torah, provided that it's a Torah sheyesh boi kiddushem shamayim. In order to make sure that the kavata itim l'Torah has value, you need to be able to answer affirmatively, nasasa v'nasata be'emunah. So dinei choshen mishpat is the yesod, it's the hakdama to Kabbalas HaTorah. But friends, this is not just about our own ruchnias. Many years ago, I was at a bris milah in yeshiva, and the grandfather of the Rachanimal gets up to speak. And I have to admit, I can't say every time a grandfather gets up to speak at a bris, this will capture my attention, or I'm paying close attention. But this grandfather spoke about something that really resonated with me. I have permission to say over the story. His name is Dr. Robert Brigida. And he got up and he said, you know, many years ago his father confided in him. His father came from Europe, he came to Montreal, and his father said, you know, I was zoicha that my children, my grandchildren, they're all Yereim Ushleimim. Most of my friends, they weren't zoicha to that. And his father said, I'm going to tell you the reason why I was zoicha. And he said something that, it was such a reality shift to me. It's not something you hear every day. He said, when I came to America, there were ways we could have cut corners in business to make an extra buck. I never took a pruta that didn't belong to me, that was unethical or illegal. in the merit of my yashrus, I was zoicha to doiros yesharim umevayrachim. And I'm thinking to myself, I never heard anybody say that. That's not the typical zechus you hear about. Usually you hear about limud Torah, you hear about dikduk b'halacha, business ethics. And I looked around and I found something, and I'm afraid to say it. And I say it with great hesitancy and with the utmost sensitivity. But not to share it would also be timna toiv mi balav. This is a comment of Reb Tzvi Elimelech of Dinov, the Baal B'nai Yissaschar. It's in the Sefer Igra de Pirka. Ilmole amrai yefshar la'amrai. If he didn't say it, who could possibly say something like this? He quotes Rabbi Menachem Mendel Miriminov. And he says, we know there's this unfortunate phenomenon. The greatest challenge of our generation is chinuch habanim. And unfortunately, there's a phenomenon. Not every child, unfortunately, is on the straight and the narrow. Says the B'nai Yissaschar, you can look it up in Agar de Perka, Ois Kuf Chavav. He brings from Menachem Mendel Miriminov, the essential ingredient in raising children is that they be fed kosher food. And we're not talking about the hechsher. We're not talking about badats. Says Menachem Mendel Miriminov, the essential ingredient in raising children is that the food is purchased with money that is completely kosher. That is the number one ingredient in raising children. Kosher gelt, used to buy kosher food. Who could say such a thing? They showed it to Rav Aaron Kotler. Rav Aaron said, Avada and Avada, Mekoiroi b'Yushalmi u'v'Zoyar, that the number one ingredient in raising families and raising erlecha children is the honesty of the money that is used to raise them. So this is not about me and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, me and my business, me and my personal life. The entire destiny of our families, the entire destiny of Klal Yisrael. If you could pin what is the foundation of the Jewish people, Rabbeinu Yoina writes, Tizaher be'emes ki hu mi yesoidei hanefesh. There's another important element about going to work that I get the feeling that the organizers of today's event also had in mind in a very important way. You know, sometimes when it comes to work, people have an attitude. Zman avoida l'chud, zman chesed l'chud. Zman work l'chud, zman tzedakah l'chud. I have my business hours, I have my work hours, and I have my tzedakah hours. Never shall the twain meet. I recently came back from a Jewish heritage trip. We went to Morocco, primarily to Kivrei Tzadikim. We had a minyan with us, and we had with us a tiny Sefer Torah. I'm talking about a Sefer Torah. It literally looks like a mezuzah. The letters were tiny. It was Parshas Vayechi. Parshas Vayechi is a Parsha Sesuma. As it is, it's not always easy to see clearly where Vayechi begins, but in this Sefer Torah, it was nearly impossible for the Baal Korei to distinguish between the end of Vayigash and the beginning of Vayechi. And Rashi famously asks, Lama Parsha Zu Sesuma? Why is it a sealed Parsha? Sealed means you don't even have a few spaces. Not only does it not begin on a new line, you don't even have a few spaces between the end of the first Parsha and the beginning of Vayechi. I want to share with you the simple words of Rashi. You know, when you learn Chumash with Rashi, and you're medayik in each word, every word is a treasure. I want to share with you the words of Rashi you already know. Zokt Rashi lama parsha zu sesuma, mibnei shekivan sheniftar Yaakov Avinu, nistemu einehem v'liban shel Yisrael. When Yaakov Avinu passed away, the eyes and the hearts of the Jewish people were sealed shut, and for some reason those words hit me. What does it mean their eyes were sealed shut? What does it mean their heart was sealed shut? Rashi should just say they were beaten, they were crushed, they were demoralized. Why the emphasis on the eyes and the heart? And then we come to the next Parsha, Parsha Shemais. Again, well-known words, but I want you to pay careful attention to the wording. The pasuk says, "Vayigdal Moshe, vayetze el Echav, vayar b'sivloisam." You all know the words of Rashi. Nasan, einav, v'liboy, lios meitzar alehem. Moshe placed his eyes and his heart to feel the pain of his brethren. Now I know why you need eyes. Now I know why you need a heart. You need eyes to feel and to see the pain of someone else. You need a heart to feel someone else's pain. If Rashi says that in Mitzrayim, our eyes and our heart were sealed shut, what that means was we were so crushed, we were so demoralized, we didn't have the emotional wherewithal to see what our friends were going through, to feel the pain of someone else. And Houston, we've got a problem. Because if you can't see what your friend is going through, if you can't feel his pain, then the Ribbon Shalom deals with us midah keneged midah. And the Ribbon Shalom looks down in Hashemayim and he says, I know you're suffering, but kiviyachal, I don't see your pain. I don't feel your pain. That's why when Yaakov passed away, nistamu einehem v'liban shel Yisrael, and now the Jewish people are on hot water. Because what are we supposed to do if the Almighty doesn't feel and see our pain? And the Ribbon Shalom, who ordinarily is an imay anochi b'tzara, which is why the Ribbon Shalom appeared to Moshe Rabbeinu mitoch hasneh. The Ribbon Shalom says, Kiviyachal, what do you want me to do? So friends, who's going to break the cycle? Comes the Moshiach Shel Yisrael. Comes the Raya Mehemna. Vayigdal Moshe. Vayetze el Echav. Vayar b'sivloisam. Nasan einav v'liboy. Lios meitzar aleim. Says Ribbon Shalom, I've been waiting for a man like this. And now Kiviyachal Moshe Rabbeinu opens up the Leiv Shel Mala and the Einayim Shel Mala. Marav Rabboisai Re'ei Zeh Pele. You know what the next pasuk says? Vayar Elokim es b'nei Yisrael. Vayeda Elokim zakt Rashi. Nasan aleihem leiv v'loi helim einav. The Yeshua comes when you open up your eyes to see what someone else is going through. When you open up your heart to feel what someone else is going through. Because you're not just doing a taiva to your friend. You're bringing Yeshua to Klal Yisrael. Because now the Ribbon Shalom opens up his eyes. And now the Ribbon Shalom opens up his heart. We always talk about Shmiras Hoinayim. We always talk about Kedusha. But you also have to go to work with your eyes open and your heart open. Is my friend making it? Could I maybe give him some more business? Could I help him advance himself? He hasn't gotten a raise in 7 years. How's he supposed to marry off his kid? Maybe I could help him find a better job. And maybe this is the reason why the Ribbon Shalom appeared to Moshe Rabbeinu mitoch hasneh. The Ribbon Shalom was telling Moshe, you know how you're going to get out of here? When you adopt this midah. You know, if Yidden are suffering in Eretz Yisrael, the first, foremost, most basic midah that we have to adopt is nasan libenu ve'einenu lios meitzar aleihem. That is what brings Yeshua for Klal Yisrael. And if you want to know what kind of bounty, what kind of windfall, what kind of jackpot is in store for those who are noisei ba'olam chaveroi, I want to share with you a simple Balaturim. It's a monumental Balaturim. You know, the Balaturim writes twice in the Chumash, only 2 times, we have the following word: U le Yosef. Number 1, Ule Yosef Yulad Shnei Banim B'terem Tavai Shnas Harav. that Yosef had 2 children only before the famine. But once the famine began, Yosef said, the world is suffering, I'm not going to engage with my wife. The second time, Uli Yosef Yulad, Uli Yosef Amar, Mevayreches Hashem Artzoi Mimeged Shamayim Mita. Then the end of the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu turns to Yosef and he says, from all the Shvatim, you have gained the greatest share in Eretz Yisrael. Says Rashi, Lai Haisa benachlas hashvatim Eretz Malaya Kol Tuv Ka'artzoi Shel Yosef. Why was Yosef zoichet to the great bounty of Mevayreches Hashem Artzoi? Because Uli Yosef Yulad Shnei Banim B'terem Tavai Shnas Harav. Because he was noisei ba'olam chaverav. Zog the Mashgiach Harav Matisyo Solomon Zecher Tzadik Levracha. And every time I hear this word, my soul quivers. The MS of it is mamish beruach Elokim. Zog Rav Matisyo Solomon. Let's look carefully at that bracha that Yosef got. Moshe Rabbeinu tells Yosef, Uli Yosef Amar, Mevayreches Hashem Artzoi. You know who's giving you this bracha, says Moshe? Uritzoin Shoichni Sneh. It's coming from the Rebbeinu Shalom who resides in the thorn bush. Marv Rabbi side, the Rebbeinu Shalom has many names. He's a Racham, he's a Chanon, Shakai, Tzavakos. Nowhere in the whole Tanakh is Rebbeinu Shalom called the one who resides in the thorn bush, except for in this pasuk. Ask Ramatasyo, why is Rebbeinu Shalom identified as the Ritzoin Shoich Nisna? Because Moshe Rabbeinu is telling Yosef, Yosef, you know why you were zoicha to this material success? You know why you're zoicha to this bracha? Because instead of advancing yourself, instead of advancing your family, instead of advancing your business, you ceased to empathize and commiserate with other people who didn't have it as good as you had it. And you know where you learned that from? You learned it from me. And you know when you learned it? When I appeared to Moshe Rabbeinu b'sneh. Mevayreches Hashem Artzoi, from the Ritzoin Shnoichni Sneh. Friends, in the zechus of our coming together this morning, to heighten our awareness of the chashivus of dinei mamonos, of being nasa v'nasan be'emuna, of heightening our awareness of kedusha in the workplace, of being noisei ba'olam chaverai, of the importance of asking shilos when it comes to mekach u'memkar. This will not only bring us tremendous aliyah baruchnias, this will not only bring us great hatzlacha in our work. We hope and we pray, may the Rebbeinu Shalom be mevarich all of us. It's almost Erev Rosh Chodesh Sivan, where the day the Shla HaKadosh says is most mesugal, to be mispalel for a doiros yisham mevayrachim. May this morning be zechus for all of us, that we should be zoicha, banim uvnei banim, oiskim atar v'mitzvahs, me'irim es ha'olam, b'atayru v'masim toivim, ad bi'as gal tzedek, b'mher v'yameinu, amen.